My name is Jamie Collins, 28, and last month I had to tell my sister Natalie I couldn't afford to fly to her destination wedding in Santorini. $2,500 was simply beyond my graphic design startup budget. Mom and Dad suggested, "You can just watch online, sweetie." So there I was, dressed up in my apartment, champagne poured, as my sister glided down the aisle looking radiant on my laptop screen. If only I'd known what would happen when that screen froze during the vows. Before I continue this story about how my sister's perfect day turned into complete chaos, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever witnessed a wedding disaster yourself. Natalie and I grew up sharing everything: clothes, secrets, our tiny bedroom with the glow-in-the-dark stars we stuck on the ceiling. Despite being 4 years older, she never made me feel like the annoying little sister. She was the organized, responsible one who color-coded her school notebooks. I was the creative dreamer who turned our bedroom walls into murals when our parents were away for the weekend. They grounded me for 2 weeks, but Natalie convinced them to let me finish the forest scene I'd started. That was my sister, always my defender, even when I messed up. After college, our paths diverged. Natalie went into pharmaceutical sales, climbing the corporate ladder with the same determination she'd applied to everything in life. Meanwhile, I pursued my passion for art, eventually launching a small graphic design business that barely paid my rent. We remained close, though life pulled us in different directions. When Natalie met Richard Blackwood at an industry conference, I knew immediately this relationship was different. Richard was everything Natalie had on her life checklist: successful businessman, charming, sophisticated, and seemingly devoted to her. After dating for 18 months, he proposed with a diamond ring that probably cost more than my annual income. I'd never seen my sister so happy. "We're thinking of a destination wedding," Natalie announced during one of our Sunday video calls. Richard has always loved the Greek islands. My heart sank immediately. As the maid of honor, I'd expected to be by her side on her big day, but international travel wasn't in my budget. For weeks after their engagement, I secretly picked up extra freelance projects, hoping to save enough for the trip. I designed logos until 3 in the morning, created brochures for local businesses, even illustrated a children's book for a self-publishing author. The extra money helped, but nowhere near enough. 2 months before the wedding, during our family dinner, I finally had to confess. "Nat, I've tried everything, but I just can't afford Santorini right now," I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. The look of disappointment on her face crushed me. "But you're my maid of honor," she whispered. "I know. I'm so sorry." My voice cracked. "I've been taking extra projects, cutting expenses, but the flight alone is over $1,000, plus the hotel for 5 nights, meals." I trailed off, the math impossible to ignore. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What about the virtual option?" Richard's wedding planner mentioned they're setting up cameras for relatives who can't travel. "You can watch the ceremony live." "It's not the same," I protested. "No, it's not," Dad agreed, "but it's better than missing it entirely. And you can send a meaningful gift instead of spending on travel." Natalie forced a smile, though I could see she was hurt. "The planner said they're using multiple camera angles, professional audio." Almost like being there. Almost. That word hung in the air between us. In the following weeks, as the wedding approached, I channeled my guilt into creating the perfect virtual attendance experience. I spent an entire paycheck on a beautiful new dress I'd wear while watching. I ordered Natalie's favorite champagne. I even decorated my small apartment with white flowers and string lights to create a wedding atmosphere. The day before the ceremony, a package arrived from Greece. Inside was a small box containing a piece of blue ribbon. "For the something blue," Natalie had written on the card. "Tie it around your wrist while you watch tomorrow. This way, we'll be connected even with an ocean between us." That night, I tied the ribbon carefully around my wrist and sobbed into my pillow, hating that I couldn't be there in person for the most important day of my sister's life. I fell asleep promising myself I'd make it up to her somehow, never imagining how soon that opportunity would come or under what circumstances. The morning of Natalie's wedding, my alarm jolted me awake at 5 a.m. noon in Santorini. Despite the early hour, Adrenaline had me instantly alert. Today was the day my sister would become Mrs. Blackwood. I'd transformed my tiny apartment for the occasion. White hydrangeas, Natalie's favorites, filled every vase I owned. I'd hung sheer fabric over my windows to create a dreamy atmosphere. The coffee table held a spread of Greek-inspired breakfast foods, yogurt with honey, fresh fruit, and pastries from the Mediterranean bakery downtown. Propping my laptop on a stack of books, I tested the connection to the livestream link I'd received. After a moment of buffering, the feed connected, showing an empty white chairs on a cliffside terrace overlooking the impossibly blue Aegean Sea. The setting was breathtaking, whitewashed buildings cascading down the volcanic cliffs, brilliant bougainvillea adding splashes of magenta against the pristine backdrop. While sipping my coffee, I watched guests begin to arrive. The camera occasionally zoomed in as they were seated. There were my parents, Mom already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, Dad looking uncomfortable but handsome in his suit. Aunt Carol and Uncle Mike, cousins Drew and Melissa, friends from college, all dressed elegantly, all there in person while I sat alone in my apartment. The sound cut out briefly, plunging the scene into silence just as the string quartet began playing. I frantically refreshed the page, catching the ceremony back just in time to see the bridal party processing. My replacement maid of honor, Natalie's college roommate Rebecca, walked carefully down the aisle. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The guests stood, heads turning toward the back. The camera panned, and there was Natalie, radiant on our father's arm. Her dress was everything she described during our planning calls, a flowing silk creation that caught the Grecian light perfectly. Her dark hair was swept up with tiny white flowers woven through it. She looked like a goddess. Tears streamed down my face as Dad walked her toward Richard, who stood beaming at the altar. The camera zoomed in on their faces as they joined hands. Richard looked genuinely overcome with emotion, his eyes never leaving Natalie's. The ceremony proceeded beautifully at first. The officiant spoke about love and commitment against the backdrop of sea and sky. Yet as I watched my family gathered there without me, a hollow feeling grew in my chest. I saw Mom lean over to whisper something to my empty seat, then catch herself, remembering I wasn't there. When the time came for vows, Richard went first. His words were eloquent, promising Natalie a lifetime of adventure, support, and devotion. I had to admit, he sounded sincere, and the way Natalie gazed at him showed how completely she believed him. Then it was my sister's turn. She unfolded a paper with slightly trembling hands and began reading in a clear voice. Richard, from our first conversation, I knew you were. That's when I noticed something odd. Richard's best man, a college friend named Tyler, suddenly looked uncomfortable. His eyes darted to the back of the gathering. The camera remained fixed on the couple, but something was clearly happening off-screen. Natalie paused mid-sentence, her expression changing from joy to confusion. Richard turned his head, and the color drained from his face. Murmurs rippled through the guests as heads swiveled toward whatever disturbance was occurring. I leaned closer to my screen, straining to see. What was happening? The camera operator seemed momentarily unsure which way to point, resulting in a jerky movement that briefly showed guests with shocked expressions before returning to my sister's face. What's going on? I said aloud to my empty apartment, as though someone might answer. The audio picked up gasps and a woman's voice, not Natalie's, saying something I couldn't quite make out. The officiant stepped back, looking thoroughly uncomfortable with whatever was unfolding. I grabbed my phone and frantically texted my cousin Drew. What's happening? The camera isn't showing everything. No immediate response. On screen, Natalie's expression had transformed from confusion to something approaching horror. Richard had stepped toward whatever, or whoever, was causing the disturbance, his hand outstretched as if to stop them. Finally, mercifully, the camera operator turned to capture the source of the chaos. A woman in a fitted red dress stood at the end of the aisle. She was striking, tall, with dark hair swept dramatically to one side, her stance confident despite the stares of 100 confused wedding guests. In her hand was what looked like a folder or document of some kind. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the woman said, her voice now clearly audible through the live stream audio, but this wedding cannot legally proceed. The camera zoomed in on Richard, whose face was now ashen. Tyler, the best man, had moved to his side, whispering urgently in his ear. Richard shook his head almost imperceptibly, his eyes never leaving the woman in red. "Who is she?" I whispered to my empty room, champagne glass frozen halfway to my lips. The woman stepped closer to the altar. "Richard knows exactly who I am," she announced, loud enough that the microphones picked up every word. "And he knows why I'm here." The camera cut to Natalie, who had turned to Richard with questioning eyes. "She's nobody," Richard said, too quietly for the microphones to capture clearly, but I could read his lips. "Some crazy ex-security will handle this." But the woman in red wasn't done. She held up what I could now see were legal papers. "He can't marry her," she announced to the gathered guests, "because he's still married to me." The camera captured the exact moment my sister's world shattered. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers, white roses scattering across the stone terrace. Chaos erupted. My parents shot to their feet. Guests began talking all at once. The wedding planner rushed forward, gesturing frantically to someone off camera, security, presumably. Richard's face had gone from ashen to crimson as he started shouting something at the woman. I knocked over my champagne in shock, barely noticing as it soaked into my dress. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen, where my sister stood completely still amidst the pandemonium, looking like a statue of a bride rather than a living, breathing woman about to begin her happily ever after. The wedding planner attempted to usher the uninvited guest away, while the officiant called for calm. Natalie's eyes never left Richard's face, silently begging him to deny everything. Instead, he turned to her and said something the microphones didn't catch. Whatever it was made Natalie physically recoil. Then, at the worst possible moment, the video began to stutter. The image froze, buffered, and froze again, capturing a tableau of absolute chaos. The woman in red advanced toward the altar with purpose in every step. The wedding guests were a mixture of shocked expressions and furious whispers. Richard looked like he might be sick. "Please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding," Natalie said, her voice barely audible on the live stream. The woman brandished her documents. "The misunderstanding is his," she said, gesturing toward Richard. "We were married 3 years ago in Bali. He told me he was going on a business trip 6 months ago and never came back. Imagine my surprise when a friend sent me your wedding announcement in the society pages." The best man stepped between them. "This is completely inappropriate. You need to leave." Not without making sure she knows the truth, the woman insisted, attempting to sidestep him. Through the audio feed, I heard Richard finally find his voice. "Melissa, stop this. We got divorced. You signed the papers." The woman, Melissa, laughed bitterly. "I signed papers, yes. But according to my lawyer, they weren't divorce papers. Just some property agreement you tricked me into signing. Our marriage is still legally binding." The camera caught Natalie's face crumbling. My parents had made their way to the front, Dad's arm protectively around Mom's shoulders. I could see him saying something to Richard, his expression thunderous. I frantically texted multiple family members. "What's happening? Can someone please answer?" The wedding planner was desperately trying to move the confrontation away from the guests, but Melissa wasn't budging. "I have the marriage certificate right here," she announced, pulling a document from her folder. "And confirmation from the records office that no divorce has been processed or finalized." The camera zoomed in just enough that I could see tears streaming down Natalie's cheeks, her carefully applied makeup now leaving dark trails on her face. Richard had moved closer to her, seemingly trying to explain, but she stepped away from his outstretched hand. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Drew. "Total shit show. Richard apparently has a wife?" Everyone freaking out. On screen, security personnel had finally arrived, gently but firmly attempting to escort Melissa away from the ceremony. She wasn't going quietly. "Ask him about Bangkok too," she called out as they led her away. "Ask him about Christine." At this new revelation, Richard visibly flinched. The best man put a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something in his ear. Natalie stood completely still, as if frozen in place. Then, with deliberate movements, she removed her veil and handed it to her maid of honor. Without a word to Richard, she turned and walked back down the aisle, my father quickly moving to her side. The guests were in complete disarray now, some following the bride, others surrounding Richard demanding explanations, still others simply watching in stunned silence. The camera operator seemed uncertain where to focus, resulting in jerky movements between Natalie's retreating figure, Richard's increasingly defensive posture, and the wedding planner attempting to restore order. "Ladies and gentlemen," the planner announced, her voice strained but professional, "we're experiencing an unexpected situation. Please remain seated while we sort this out. Refreshments will be served on the lower terrace." My champagne lay forgotten, soaking into the carpet as I leaned toward the screen, desperate for more information. The live stream quality had begun to deteriorate, the image pixelating. No, I muttered, frantically refreshing the page. For a moment, the stream stabilized, showing Richard now in heated conversation with my father. Their body language was tense, Dad's finger jabbing at Richard's chest. Mom had gone after Natalie, along with several bridesmaids. Then, as if the universe itself couldn't bear to witness more of this disaster, the video froze completely, capturing the exact moment Richard's face contorted in what appeared to be the beginning of a shout. The last frame showed the idyllic Santorini backdrop contrasting cruelly with the human drama unfolding in the foreground. I clicked refresh repeatedly, to no avail. The stream was dead. The frozen image on my laptop mocked me, a perfect snapshot of disaster. Richard's face contorted mid-shout, my father's rigid posture radiating fury, confused guests frozen in various states of shock. Behind them all, the perfect blue Santorini sky and sea continued their serene existence, oblivious to the human drama. Come on, I muttered, refreshing the page for the 20th time. The loading circle spun endlessly, never reconnecting. I slammed my laptop shut in frustration, then immediately opened it again, hoping for a miracle. I grabbed my phone and fired off texts to everyone I could think of. "Mom, what's happening?" The stream died. "Is Natalie okay?" "Dad, please call me when you can." The video cut out. "Drew, need updates." "Is this for real?" "Who is that woman?" "Rebecca, maid of honor, please check on my sister." Stream froze. I'm freaking out. No immediate responses. Of course not, they were all dealing with the live disaster, not worrying about the virtual attendee thousands of miles away. I paced my small apartment, the champagne stains spreading on my dress unnoticed. My imagination filled in the blanks with increasingly worse scenarios. Was Natalie completely devastated? Was Richard trying to explain it away? Was the woman in red telling the truth? Memories flooded back, Richard's charm when I first met him at their engagement dinner. How he'd seemed perfect, almost too perfect. The way he sometimes checked his phone too quickly when it dinged with notifications. Natalie had been so in love she didn't notice, or chose not to. Had there been signs I missed? Should I have investigated him somehow? What kind of sister was I, failing to protect Natalie from this humiliation? The irony wasn't lost on me. If I'd been there in person, I wouldn't be in this information blackout. My attempt to save money had left me helpless at the moment my sister needed support most. After 30 minutes of fruitless page refreshing and unanswered texts, my phone finally buzzed. A text from my cousin Drew. Total disaster. Natalie left ceremony. Richard trying to explain but looks bad. Will call when I can. This tiny crumb of information only intensified my anxiety. I tried calling my parents, Natalie, Drew, Rebecca, straight to voicemail every time. Of course, international calls were probably not going through, or everyone had their phones off during the chaos. I collapsed onto my couch, feeling utterly useless. The pretty dress I'd bought specially for the occasion now seemed ridiculous, playing dress-up for a wedding viewing party of one, while my sister's life imploded in real time. As the hours passed with minimal updates, my thoughts spiraled darker. I remembered Natalie's excitement when she'd first met Richard. He's different, Jamie. He listens. He remembers little things. And he makes me feel like the most important person in the world. Had it all been calculated? Was he some kind of serial husband? The woman had mentioned Bangkok, mentioned someone named Christine. How many others were there? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my phone rang with an international number. I lunged for it. Hello. Jamie, it's Mom. Her voice sounded strained, exhausted. Mom? What's happening? Is Natalie okay? Was that woman really? Slow down, honey. It's complicated. That woman, Melissa, she's claiming to be Richard's wife. He says they were married, but got divorced. She's saying the divorce was never finalized properly. Is it true? A heavy sigh. We don't know yet. Richard called his lawyer, who's trying to sort through the documentation. But Jamie, it doesn't look good. Melissa had their marriage certificate and correspondence from Richard from just months ago. My heart sank. Where's Natalie now? In her suite. Mom's voice broke. She's not good, honey. She won't talk to anyone except me, and even that's just a few words. She's in shock. And Richard? Your father made it clear he needed to stay away from Natalie until this is sorted out. He's with his lawyer now. In the background, I could hear the murmur of voices, the chaos still unfolding. I wish I was there, I said, my voice breaking. I know, sweetheart. I need to go, your father's calling me. We'll update you as soon as we know more. The line went dead, leaving me alone with the knowledge that my sister's heart was breaking and I was an ocean away. The next few hours passed in a blur of sparse updates. A text from Drew with a blurry photo of Richard arguing with someone in the hotel lobby. A brief call from Rebecca saying the wedding guests were divided between those leaving immediately and those staying for the drama. A message from my father saying simply, taking care of Nat. We'll call tomorrow. As evening fell in my time zone, late night in Santorini, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop, not to check the wedding stream again, but to search for flights. The prices were astronomical for last-minute international travel. The cheapest option would max out my credit card and eat into what little savings I had. I'd be in debt for months. I booked it without hesitation. Within an hour, I'd packed a small bag, arranged for a neighbor to water my plants, and called a rideshare to the airport. As I locked my apartment door, I glanced back at the sad remnants of my virtual wedding setup, wilting flowers, empty champagne bottle, the dress I'd changed out of now crumpled on the bathroom floor. Whatever financial hardship this impulsive trip would cause, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: my sister needed me. Not on a screen, not through texts, but physically present. Sometimes the most important things couldn't be experienced virtually, no matter how good the connection. My flight departed at midnight, launching me into a grueling international journey with minimal information about the ongoing situation. The first leg to New York felt interminable, my anxiety heightened by spotty airport Wi-Fi that delivered only fragments of updates from Greece. During my layover at JFK, my phone finally rang with my mother's number. Jamie, where are you? I've been trying your apartment. I'm at the airport, I explained. On my way to Greece. A pause. You're coming here? But honey, the cost. Doesn't matter, I interrupted. How's Natalie? Mom sighed heavily. It's worse than we thought. That woman, Melissa, she brought documentation that seems legitimate. They were married in Bali 3 years ago, before Richard met Natalie. And the divorce. That's where it gets complicated. Richard insists they filed for divorce, but Melissa claims he tricked her into signing property documents, not divorce papers. She only discovered the wedding was happening because a coworker saw the announcement online. My boarding call echoed through the terminal. I have to go, Mom. My flight's boarding. But please, tell me what else you know. The woman mentioned someone named Christine in Bangkok. When your father pressed him, Richard admitted there was another relationship, but insisted it was after he separated from Melissa. So he's been lying to everyone, I said flatly. It seems that way. Natalie's absolutely devastated. She hasn't left her suite since yesterday. As passengers around me queued up, I lowered my voice. Tell her I'm coming, okay? I'll be there as soon as humanly possible. I will, sweetheart. It'll mean everything to her. The transatlantic flight felt like torture, my mind creating endless scenarios of what might be happening in Santorini. The airline's Wi-Fi was exorbitantly priced, but I paid without hesitation, desperate for any updates. An email from Rebecca contained the most comprehensive information yet. Jamie, things have escalated. Police came to the hotel this morning. Apparently Richard may have multiple marriages in different countries. Someone, I think one of Richard's college friends, leaked the story to a tabloid website. Your parents have moved Natalie to a different hotel to avoid the gossip. Most guests are leaving, but some of Richard's friends are defending him, saying it's all a misunderstanding. The resort staff is being amazing considering the circumstances. Let me know your travel plans and I'll help however I can. I opened a notes document on my phone and began organizing the fragments of information I'd received, trying to piece together a coherent picture of Richard's deceptions. The pattern that emerged was disturbing: a man who moved between countries, possibly maintaining relationships in each, using his international business travel as cover. By the time I landed in Athens, my notes contained references to at least 3 women: Natalie, Melissa from the wedding, and the mysterious Christine in Bangkok. Who knew how many others there might be? The final leg to Santorini involved a smaller plane and then a ferry, each minute of travel increasing my determination to support my sister through this nightmare. My body ached from nearly 24 hours of travel, but adrenaline kept me moving. As the ferry approached Santorini, the island's famous caldera came into view, white buildings perched on volcanic cliffs, the blue-domed churches that appeared in every travel brochure. It was breathtakingly beautiful, which only heightened the tragedy of what had happened here. A text from my father provided the name of their new hotel, and I hired a taxi from the port. The driver, a friendly local named Costas, seemed to sense my distress. "You're here for vacation?" he asked cheerfully. "No," I replied, too exhausted for pretense. "A family emergency." He nodded sympathetically in the rearview mirror. "Santorini has good hospitals if someone is sick." "It's not that kind of emergency," I said, then found myself explaining anyway. "My sister's wedding, it didn't happen. The groom turned out to be already married." Costas's eyes widened. This is terrible. But better to discover before marriage than after, no?" His simple wisdom struck me as profoundly true. "Yes," I agreed. "Much better." As we wound our way up the narrow roads to Oahe, the northern tip of the island where my parents had relocated, I gazed out at the sparkling Aegean. The same beautiful view my sister had chosen for her wedding was now the backdrop to her heartbreak. When we finally arrived at the boutique hotel, I spotted my parents immediately, sitting at a small table on the terrace. They looked exhausted, aged somehow in the short time since I'd seen them on the livestream. Mom saw me first, her face transforming with surprise and relief. "Jamie." They both rushed to me, enveloping me in a group hug that nearly brought me to tears. "You didn't have to come all this way," Dad said, even as he held me tighter. "Yes, I did." I pulled back, searching their faces. "Where is she?" "In her room," Mom answered. "She still won't see anyone except me, and only briefly." "Will she see me?" "Let me check." Mom disappeared into the hotel while Dad helped me with my small bag. "What's the latest?" I asked him quietly. His face hardened. "The police are involved now. Turns out Richard has a pattern of this behavior. They're investigating whether he's committed actual fraud, not just been a lying scumbag. And he's still on the island." Dad's expression was grim. "No. He left yesterday when the police started asking questions. Didn't even have the decency to face Natalie before he ran." Mom reappeared, her expression cautiously hopeful. "She wants to see you." They led me through the small, elegant hotel to a suite with a private terrace overlooking the sea. Mom knocked gently, calling Natalie's name. After a moment, the door opened. The sight of my sister broke my heart. Still in her silk wedding robe, her hair tangled, eyes red and swollen from crying, she looked nothing like the radiant bride I'd seen on screen. When she saw me, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Jamie? How are you here?" "I came as soon as I could," I said, moving toward her. For a moment she just stared, and then, like a dam breaking, she collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with fresh sobs. "I've got you," I whispered, holding her tight. "I've got you now." The 24 hours of travel had been both physically and emotionally exhausting, but none of that mattered as I held my sobbing sister. We moved inside her suite, leaving our parents on the terrace to give us privacy. Natalie's room was a scene of interrupted celebration. Her wedding dress hung from the closet door, a half-empty bottle of champagne still in an ice bucket, now melted to room temperature. Various cosmetics and jewelry were scattered across the dresser, as if she'd been interrupted while getting ready and never had the heart to tidy up. "I can't believe you're actually here," Natalie said, finally pulling back to look at me. "How did you afford this?" "Don't worry about that right now," I assured her, though the maxed-out credit card felt like it was burning in my wallet. Natalie sat on the edge of the unmade bed, looking lost. "I feel so stupid, Jamie. So completely, utterly stupid." "You're not stupid," I said firmly, sitting beside her. "He's the liar. He's the fraud. This is not your fault." She laughed bitterly. "I was so careful my whole life. Planned everything. Checked all the boxes. Then I meet this guy who seemed perfect, and I just believed everything he said." "Tell me what happened after the stream cut out," I said gently. "I've been piecing things together from everyone's texts, but I need to hear it from you." Natalie took a shaky breath. It was like watching someone else's life implode. One minute I'm saying my vows, the next this woman is standing there saying she's Richard's wife. She paused, fighting fresh tears. At first, I thought it was some cruel joke. But then I saw his face. He wasn't surprised, Jamie. He was panicked. That's when I knew she was telling the truth. "What did he say to you?" "When I confronted him, he said it was a misunderstanding, that they were separated and the divorce was just a technicality." Her voice hardened. "But then that woman, Melissa, mentioned Bangkok. Someone named Christine. When Dad pressed him about it, he admitted there had been others." His exact words. I reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I'm so sorry, Nat. The worst part is how public it all was. Everyone watching. The pitying looks." She gestured to her phone on the nightstand. "It's already on gossip websites. The perfect wedding ruined by the secret wife." "What about the legal side?" "Dad mentioned the police." Natalie nodded. "They came yesterday morning. Apparently, Richard has a history of this, moving between countries, possibly maintaining multiple relationships. They're investigating whether he's committed marriage fraud for visa purposes or financial gain." "And he just left? Without talking to you?" "Left a note with the wedding planner." She reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a folded piece of hotel stationery. "Want to read it?" I took it hesitantly. The brief message was written in what I assumed was Richard's handwriting. "Natalie, I never meant for any of this to happen. Things with Melissa were complicated, but my feelings for you were always real. I need to sort this legal situation out. I'll call when I can. Please believe me." Bastard," I muttered, setting the note aside. "The police think he's left the country already. Probably using one of his other passports." "Other passports?" "Apparently he holds dual citizenship. Something else I didn't know about the man I almost married." Natalie's voice cracked on the last word. We sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling around us. Outside, the Santorini sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the caldera. It would have been the perfect backdrop for wedding photos. "I keep thinking about the signs I missed," Natalie said quietly. "The unexplained absences. The secretive phone calls. The way he never wanted me to visit him on certain business trips. I justified everything because I was so in love with the idea of him." "We all miss the signs," I assured her. "He fooled everyone, Mom, Dad, your friends." He was convincing. "But now what?" she asked, gesturing around the luxurious suite. "We've paid for 5 more days in this paradise I can't even enjoy. Most of the guests have left. The ones who stayed are just gossiping about the scandal. I can't show my face without feeling like a complete fool." I considered this for a moment, then made a decision. "You're not hiding away for the rest of this trip. We're going to reclaim this vacation." "What are you talking about?" "This place, it's still beautiful. The food is still amazing. The ocean is still perfect. Why should Richard steal that too?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than despair in her eyes. "I don't know if I can." "You can. We can. Together. I stood up, suddenly energized despite my travel exhaustion. Let's start right now. You're going to shower, put on something comfortable, and we're going to have dinner with Mom and Dad on that gorgeous terrace. Jamie, I look terrible. I've been crying for 2 days straight. So, put on sunglasses. Everyone wears them here anyway. I moved to her suitcase, rummaging until I found a simple sundress. This. And a cardigan if it gets chilly later. She hesitated, then took the garments from me. You're not going to let this go, are you? Nope. I grinned. One of the advantages of having a stubborn little sister. While Natalie showered, I stepped onto the terrace to update our parents. How is she? Mom asked anxiously. Heartbroken. Humiliated. But tough, like she's always been. I explained my plan to salvage the remainder of their time in Santorini. We need to help her reclaim this place from the bad memories. Dad nodded approvingly. That's my girl. Always the problem solver. There's just one thing, I added hesitantly. I kind of maxed out my credit card getting here. I wasn't exactly planning on a 5-day stay in Santorini. Don't worry about money right now, Mom said firmly. We'll cover your expenses here. And we'll sort out that credit card when we get home, Dad added. You did the right thing coming here, Jamie. It means everything to your sister. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the whitewashed buildings in shades of pink and gold, Natalie emerged from the bathroom. Her eyes were still puffy, but she'd put on the sundress and even a touch of lip gloss. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, still damp from the shower. You look beautiful, I told her sincerely. She attempted a smile. I don't feel beautiful. But I am hungry. We joined our parents for dinner on the hotel's cliffside terrace. The staff, who had clearly been briefed on the situation, were discreetly attentive, keeping our wine glasses filled and ensuring no one disturbed our family meal. As we ate fresh Greek salad, grilled fish, and warm bread dipped in olive oil, I watched my sister carefully. Though she spoke little and ate less, there were moments when the sea breeze lifted her hair or the distant sound of music from the village made her pause, when I could see the first tiny cracks in her grief, letting in slivers of the world's beauty again. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. And I was there to witness it, not through a screen but in person, close enough to reach across the table and squeeze her hand when tears threatened again. As night fell and stars appeared above the Aegean, I knew coming to Santorini had been the right decision, no matter the cost. Some moments couldn't be experienced virtually. Some kinds of support could only be given in person. After dinner, our parents retired to their room, emotionally drained from the past 48 hours. I walked Natalie back to her suite, where we found ourselves on her private terrace, looking out at the moonlight dancing on the dark sea. Do you want me to stay with you tonight? I offered, concerned about leaving her alone with her thoughts. She nodded, relief evident in her eyes. Please. I haven't been sleeping well. Inside, I helped her turn down the bed, then hesitated, realizing I had no pajamas or change of clothes in my hastily packed carry-on. Here, Natalie said, opening a drawer and tossing me a soft t-shirt. You can borrow this. It was her old college shirt, worn thin from years of use. The familiar fabric in my hands brought a rush of memories, late-night study sessions when I'd visit her at school, early morning coffee runs, her unwavering encouragement when I doubted my artistic abilities. Remember when you let me crash in your dorm that weekend? Mom and Dad were fighting about whether I should go to art school. I asked, changing into the shirt. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. You slept on that horrible futon and didn't complain once. Because you took me to all the cool college parties and introduced me as your sister, not your annoying little tag-along. We settled onto the bed, propped against the pillows, a plate of baklava between us that we'd brought up from dinner. Tell me something, Natalie said, picking at a piece of the honey-soaked pastry. If the livestream hadn't frozen, if you'd seen everything unfold in real time, what would you have done? Probably thrown my laptop across the room in frustration at not being able to help, I admitted. Then booked the same flight I ended up on anyway. I kept thinking about you during the chaos, she said quietly. Wondering if you could see it all happening, if you were watching me fall apart from thousands of miles away. I saw enough, I told her. Enough to know you needed me here. Natalie's eyes filled with fresh tears. You know what kills me? I actually thought he was the one, Jamie. The real deal. I had this whole future mapped out in my head, the house we'd buy, the children we'd have. It was all so clear. She brushed away a tear. Now I don't even know if he gave me his real name. The police will sort that out, I assured her. And from what Dad said, they're taking it seriously. Because I'm not the only one, she said bitterly. Just the latest in a line of women he's deceived. How special. I reached for her hand. Look at me, Nat. You're special. You're brilliant and kind and beautiful. None of that changed because some pathological liar couldn't see your worth. But how did I miss it? There must have been signs. I considered this. Maybe there were subtle ones. But Richard was good at this. He'd had practice. He knew exactly what to say, how to behave, what stories to tell to make everything seem legitimate. I should have done more research on him. What were you supposed to do? Run a background check on every continent? Hire a private investigator before accepting a dinner date? I shook my head. That's not how relationships work. Trust isn't a character flaw, Nat. We fell silent for a moment, the distant sound of music drifting up from the village below. You know, I said finally, when the livestream froze, I felt so helpless. I kept thinking about all the times you've been there for me, when I bombed that big client pitch last year, when Jake and I broke up, when I wasn't sure if I could make rent. You always showed up for me. That's what sisters do, she said simply. Exactly. And that's why I'm here now. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to be strong all the time, Nat. It's okay to fall apart. I'll help put the pieces back together. Her composure finally broke completely, and she sobbed. Deep, wrenching cries that seemed to come from her very core. I held her through it, saying nothing, simply being the steady presence she needed. Later, as her tears subsided, she whispered, "Do you know what the worst part is? I'm not just sad. I'm angry. At him, at myself, at the universe for letting me believe in something that was a complete lie." Good, I said firmly. Anger is better than despair. Anger can be fuel. She looked at me curiously. Fuel for what? For whatever comes next. For rebuilding. For figuring out who you are without the future you thought you were getting. I gestured out toward the terrace, where the lights of Santorini twinkled against the night sky. For reclaiming this beautiful place from the memory of him. I don't know if I can. Not alone, maybe. But you're not alone. We stayed up talking until dawn, moving from grief to rage to occasional moments of inappropriate laughter at the sheer absurdity of the situation. I told her about maxing out my credit card to be there, and instead of protesting, she simply said, "Thank you." As the first light began to color the horizon, I had an idea. You know what we should do? Have a ceremony. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. A what? Not a wedding ceremony, I clarified quickly. A letting go ceremony. A cleansing ritual. Something symbolic to release all this pain. Like what? Burn his pictures. Throw the ring into the sea. I nodded. Exactly like that. Plus, we have all these people still here who love you, Mom, Dad, some of your friends who stayed. Let's create a new memory to replace the wedding that wasn't. She was quiet for a long moment. That actually doesn't sound crazy, she finally said. Of course not. I'm the creative one, remember. A real smile touched her lips for the first time since I'd arrived. You certainly are. As we watched the sunrise together, exhausted but somehow lighter, Natalie rested her head on my shoulder. I'm really glad the screen froze, she said softly. I looked at her questioningly. Because if it hadn't, you might have seen everything and still been stuck there, helpless. At least this way, it brought you to me. I put my arm around her shoulders. I'd have found my way here regardless. That's what sisters do. The next morning, despite our lack of sleep, I woke with a sense of purpose. While Natalie showered, I outlined my plan for the day, a ritual of release and renewal that would help her begin healing. First, I recruited our parents and the few remaining friends who had stayed in Santorini, Rebecca, the maid of honor, cousin Drew, Natalie's college roommate Stephanie, and two of her closest work friends, Mark and Jennifer. Everyone eagerly embraced the idea, relieved to have something positive to focus on. With the hotel manager's permission, we arranged to use a small, secluded beach below the cliffs at sunset. The staff, who had been nothing but compassionate throughout the ordeal, offered to set up torches and provide a small table with wine and local delicacies. I sent Natalie shopping with Mom and Rebecca, with instructions to find something white but not bridal, something that represented new beginnings rather than lost dreams. Meanwhile, Dad and I gathered supplies, paper and pens for writing down thoughts to be burned, a small decorative box for the engagement ring, and flowers for a simple ceremony. When we reconvened that afternoon, Natalie emerged in a flowing white sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, adorned with a single white flower. The transformation from the broken woman I'd found in her hotel room was remarkable. "You look beautiful," I told her sincerely. "I feel lighter," she admitted. "Not okay yet, but maybe like I could be eventually." We made our way down to the beach as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The hotel staff had arranged chairs in a semicircle facing the sea, with torches casting a warm glow in the fading light. The setting was intimate and peaceful, worlds away from the elaborate wedding venue where everything had fallen apart. Once everyone was seated, I stepped into the center of our small gathering. "We're here today not to mourn what was lost," I began, but to celebrate what remains, our love for Natalie, her strength, and the beginning of a new chapter. Sometimes the universe has a way of protecting us from what we think we want. I handed out paper and pens to everyone. I'd like us each to write down something we wish for Natalie's future or something we want to release from the past few days. As we wrote, the only sounds were the gentle lapping of waves and distant music from a taverna up the cliffside. When everyone had finished, I placed a small metal bowl in the center of our circle. "Natalie, would you like to go first?" She nodded, stepping forward with the paper clutched tightly in her hand. I wrote down all the futures I had imagined with Richard, the house, the children, the anniversaries. Dreams that were built on lies. Her voice wavered, but remained strong. "I'm letting them go, not because they weren't beautiful dreams, but because they deserve a foundation of truth." She placed her paper in the bowl, and I handed her a match. As the paper caught fire, her shoulders straightened visibly. One by one, others added their papers to the flames, words of anger, disappointment, embarrassment, all transmuted into ash and smoke that drifted away on the sea breeze. When everyone had taken their turn, I brought forward the small box containing Natalie's engagement ring. "You don't have to decide what to do with this right now," I told her quietly. "But when you're ready, this box can go into the sea, or be sold, or whatever feels right to you." Natalie took the box, weighing it in her palm. Then, in a decisive movement, she pulled out the ring and walked to the water's edge. "This was given to me with false promises," she said, her voice carrying over the gentle waves. "I return it to the universe with the truth of my heart." With a fluid motion, she threw the ring far out into the azure waters. It caught the last golden rays of sunlight before disappearing beneath the surface. When she turned back to face us, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, looking at each face in our circle. "For staying. For loving me through this. For helping me find a way forward." As the last light faded from the sky, we moved to the table the hotel had prepared. Candles illuminated platters of local cheese, olives, fresh bread, and wine. What began as a solemn ritual evolved into an intimate dinner party, with conversation and even occasional laughter. I watched my sister throughout the evening, noting the moments when grief would momentarily cloud her features before she would consciously choose to re-engage with the present. Her resilience humbled me. As the night progressed, Mom pulled me aside, pressing an envelope into my hand. "What's this?" I asked. "Enough to cover your credit card and then some," she said firmly. "Don't argue. What you did for your sister is beyond price, but at least we can make sure it doesn't financially handicap you." I started to protest, but Dad joined us, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We're proud of you, Jamie. You dropped everything to be here when Natalie needed you most. That's what family is about." Later, as the gathering wound down, Natalie and I walked along the beach, the lights of Santorini twinkling above us on the cliffs. "I've been thinking," she said. Maybe this trip doesn't have to be a total loss. What do you mean? We have 3 more days in one of the most beautiful places on Earth. What if we treated it as a sister's vacation instead of a failed wedding trip? I smiled, linking my arm through hers. I'd like that very much. And maybe, she continued hesitantly, we could make it an annual tradition. A sister's trip, somewhere new each year. Absolutely, I agreed immediately. Though maybe somewhere less expensive next time? My bank account needs recovery time. She laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that I hadn't heard since before the disaster. Deal. On our final evening in Santorini, our parents insisted on taking a family photograph against the backdrop of the sunset. Unlike the forced smiles and careful poses of typical vacation photos, this one captured something raw and real, 4 people who had weathered a crisis together and emerged closer for it. As we boarded our flights home the next day, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me to Greece. What began with a frozen image on my laptop screen had evolved into one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. Natalie hugged me tightly at the airport before we separated for different connections. "Thank you for coming when my world was falling apart," she whispered. "Always, I promised. Screen freeze or not." What I didn't tell her then, but what I know with certainty now, is that sometimes our greatest gifts come disguised as disasters. A wedding that wasn't meant to be led to a sister bond strengthened beyond measure. A financial sacrifice brought rewards no money could buy. And a frozen screen became the catalyst for showing up in person when it mattered most. The real love story wasn't the one that ended at the altar, but the one that has sustained us through every joy and heartbreak, the unbreakable bond between sisters. So if you're watching this and wondering whether to hit that book now button for a flight to be there for someone you love, let me be the voice that says, do it. Some moments can't be experienced through a screen. Some support can only be given in person. And sometimes, what seems like the worst moment can become the beginning of something beautiful. If you've ever been there for someone when they needed you most, or had someone show up for you in a crisis, drop a comment below sharing your experience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Thank you for being part of this journey, and remember, when screens freeze, real love shows up in person.